The all right, hang on, hang on. All right, I got to restart that. This fall,
Doom, doom.
there's one serious, heavy question that's
Doom,
weighing on the entire world's collective mind.
doom, doom.
Where, oh, where has Mike Gundy gone?
Doom, doom,
Where, oh, where could he be?
doom, doom,
Hey, how's it going, everybody? Welcome to
doom,
the
doom.
Talk-Ons. uh, yeah, the Talk-On show for the 25-26 college football season, where we talk all about college football. Yeah, and
And we totally never miss a week.
nah, if you paid attention, you would realize that we've been on the ball like every single time uh, a coach scratches an itch. We're there to give coverage on the season. So yeah, totally been on the ball because we're professionals, and remember, we're always objectively correct. So week 5 is where we're at now. Some
Yep.
things to talk about.
Yep. And I think we're just going to try and keep it short and sweet. We say that all the time, but I think this time we're actually going to try.
We're gonna
Um,
do it.
it'll
We're gonna do
be
it.
so we're going to have, I think tonight we're just going to discuss the AP poll. It's kind of like a state of the sport thing, the AP poll, of course, because I think as we all know, the AP poll is probably the worst thing ever on this entire planet. So
Yeah,
it's just terrible, but we'll get into that.
it's only gotten
Get into
worse.
why my
Very
name
bad.
is Bex Check. I'll tie into a little bit of like the state of like the media image. And then I guess
Bruh, just
maybe if
explain yourself, man. I mean, don't explain yourself. We're supposed to introduce ourselves. Proper introductions.
oh proper well today I am Bex Check, aka Chase. So did you
And
want me to explain or
I am your Coco host, Gundward Bound. Where, oh,
I was
where did our Gundy go?
I was well it's because he's not 40 anymore. He's not a man.
AKA Cam. But also, that's a good point. I guess he just turned 41. So he's just
Yep,
disappeared.
he finally turned 41, and it all went down the drain. He's no
Uh,
longer a man who's 40.
Gundy.exe
Ex-
has terminated.
So I guess that's something we could start out because it's kind of like a breaking news thing. Crazy that Mike Gundy been coaching for Oklahoma State for as long as I can remember. I almost feel like he's been coaching the entire time I've been alive. So
Uh, 20, 21 years.
was it
I think it's
21?
longer than
So
that.
pretty close. I guess you know what? Like yeah, how shameful.
As far back as you can remember, literally Gundy has been the coach for Oklahoma State. I think as far back
20
as
years.
either of us will remember.
20
23
years. He started in
or 20?
2005. He started in 2005, so pretty close to the entirety of my life. So
Pretty much right when
I was
I
4 years old when he started coaching.
really just started watching football. Yeah, that's crazy. Oklahoma State's winningest all-time coach.
So I hate that he went out the way he did, but I mean, I guess that's the only way to finally tell, hey, we need to get rid of the guy. So, but yeah, to get absolutely just, oh man, just eaten a lot. I don't even know what you'd call it. I mean, 69-3. You're supposed to be a Power Four team, and you're getting beat 69-3, and then going and losing to another to a group of five right after by like you just can't do that. I mean, he put up 12 points in a group of five, and OSU's always been known for a powerful offense. So you know, I always liked Gundy for the most part. He always seemed like a funny coach, I guess. But it all has to come to an end, and you can only
Yeah,
coach for so long.
Gundy,
So
the Gunster had a lot of entertainment value, that's for sure.
the question
But
is,
yeah,
with Gundy, is like, I know this is a random one to bring up, but it makes me think, it's like, what about like Dabo Swinney? Like, is he on the hot seat if this season goes really south? You know, so
I think probably, well, because of the standard and expectation that he set there, number one. And if he refuses to, adapt to the new business model of college football, with the NIL and transfer portal, if he refuses to adapt to that, inclusive of the standard and expectation he set at Clemson, yes, I think they'll get rid of him.
well,
They
it's one of those
most
things where it's like,
likely
I mean,
will.
I appreciate Dabo Swinney wanting to just keep it, traditional, but that obviously just isn't the way to do it. Now you just can't do it. So because
I mean,
I hate it because I like Dabo Swinney as a coach. As
Saban
he seems like
himself knew when to
so
call it quits.
yeah. So even Saban did it because Saban didn't want to have to do it this way. But Saban got, I don't want to say lucky because he did it himself, but just the timing, it didn't start falling in this direction until he had already won, 7, 8 championships, whatever the frick it was. So,
Yeah, when he was hoarding all the talent.
yeah. So it's because he couldn't hoard the talent anymore, which is why I left. Yeah, we're on to you, Saban.
Yeah, yeah. How about that, Nick? You got to say for yourself.
So,
Oh,
so I guess now that we've kind of gotten the breaking news out the way, I guess we can get into the AP Top 25, the current
yeah,
standings right
and
now.
I think
So,
as the last point on Gundy is I think it was time because honestly, after 20 years and past couple of seasons, you've been consistently a really bad program in the
yeah.
standing of Power Four expectations. Not to mention your own standard that you had set for Oklahoma State. It probably, yeah, it's time to go.
When you go from a consistent contender in the Big 12 to pretty much being the worst Power 4 team in the country
Yeah.
consistently, it's like something's got to give. So,
Well, I mean, it could either be, Oklahoma State or Purdue, kind of give or take, flip of a coin the past couple of years. It's either going to be Okie State or Purdue as far as the worst Power
right.
Four team. But yeah, poor old Gundy. I wonder what he's going to do now.
I think Notre Dame's the
He's
worst
probably.
Power 4 team in the country right now.
Ooh. Oh my goodness. Oh, I can feel the Irish just the stares
Obviously, I don't think
already.
that's true, but I think with that's kind of the mentality I think that you should have instead of what the AP has to just automatically assume they're golden, amazing talent that should be top 5, or top 10.
Which a timeless practice that goes without saying, and we'll jump right into that. The AP top 25 rankings. Probably the
The
most
ass
objectively
Sody, you cut me off. I'm
incorrect.
gonna cut you off. I was
There
trying to
might
make
be a
a joke on their
delay.
name and I screwed it up because the delay.
Yeah, because
So
all we heard was ass,
Assos. I said
which is,
Assos, Asok or
I
whatever I said.
mean, it
Yeah, I mean
works.
that's fitting. The
It's fitting.
Associated Press because they have no clue what they're doing. I mean, I
I
guess
don't
they
really
know what they're doing. They
understand.
just don't care.
Right. Like there's a method to the madness, but it is in fact madness and it's just crap. These rankings are unbelievably crap.
I,
They've
I,
been crap for years.
yeah, I think the perfect way to say the biggest issue with
I just
the
went
AP
Gundy mode
poll,
for a second.
the biggest issue can be. I think the it can all be kind of built into like a 3-part thing. Is that and you have the problems are preseason rankings should not be a thing. Uh, pre previous rank like fallacy, which we'll explain what we mean by that, and then uh, what was you making all those noises is literally throwing me off. I'm trying to wing this,
we're
man.
we're extra professionals now.
We're
We have to
extra
use the
professionals.
soundboard.
And then the third one is big brand bias, of course, the BBB. So
What did he
I didn't
say?
think I didn't think that one through too much before I said it. So
I almost missed that one. All this use of the soundboard, and I almost didn't do it on the perfect moment.
anyways, so I guess we could each kind of, work on a topic or whatever. So I guess it's preseason rankings. I guess if you want to talk about preseason rankings.
I mean, I guess not much to say. Preseason rankings. I'm not really sure. Like there is pretty much a clear cut business model consensus reason for why the AP does what they do. But the preseason rank, and maybe the preseason rankings is like some kind of catalyst to make it less obvious. Um, maybe because we both know that, and most people probably know at this point, that the biggest reason why the AP does this crap is to fabricate hype for games. It's to create false hype and high ratings, boost the ratings of games between schools, because when they're ranked, it makes for a bigger game, even if the rankings don't make sense and there's no justification for rankings at this point in time. It's good TV. So that's the ultimate reason they do it. And I guess maybe doing preseason rankings makes it less obvious. Maybe they feel like it's a more like objective catalyst that they can use. So it's like they don't come day one of the season and they just say, okay, Ohio State's number one, Texas number two,
Right.
Notre Dame number three, right off the bat, day one. They have to give some kind of objective-ish catalyst that they use with some kind of gauge. Oh, returning production and off-season practice and stuff. So at least they put some effort into giving some kind of like basis for it, even though it's still fallible
Right.
and doesn't work when push comes to shove. But maybe that's why they do the preseason rankings, but it's dumb because the biggest issue with the preseason rankings is the rotten foundation that they create from the start of the season
Yep.
through most of the season. When the rankings start off poorly founded, baseless, and nonsensical, the way that they formulate everything beyond that based on those initial preseason rankings is just inherently flawed, and it
Well,
just
because
messes
they
nothing makes sense.
Well, because
Yeah.
they have the preseason rankings, which are all off of just whatever they believe in, which I think preseason rankings are dumb in the first place. But then they just go based off the big brand bias, and then after that, they go and that ties into the second thing I mentioned, which is the previous rank fallacy, which is like the fact that you have to base the next week rank off of what they were ranked before. When I think that's not how you should do this. The landscape of the sport changes every week because 95% of these teams play a game each weekend. So it's like everything changes. Everybody changes. You can't just go, oh, they were number 6 when they played them. So, they beat number 6 last week and we put them at number
Right.
4. And so but then they lost to this person. But like, well, because we put them at 4, we can't move them down 10 spots for one loss. It's like, yeah, you can. Because what if like the team that they lost to, maybe the team that they lost to was like ranked like 20 or something. But then the reason you ranked them 20 was because they had like a couple of solid wins against other teams. Well, what if those other teams that same week lose to a bunch of even worse teams? It's sort of like the domino effect that you have to pay attention to. The whole game changes week to week. So any reason you rank them beforehand, if it changes, your entire rank has to change. You can't just go, oh, well, we put them at 4. So, but because they beat number 4 Clemson last week, but then they lost. But because they're number 4, we gotta kind of maintain them at like within that. It just doesn't seem fair to drop them 5 spots. It's like, well, if they beat Clemson at number 4 2 weeks ago, and that's why you had them at 4, but then we noticed that Clemson's lost 2 straight to terrible teams. It's like they need to not it doesn't matter anymore. It's not a good win.
You need to be
So
able to adjust that, real time, because like you said, the scope, the dynamic changes week to week when you're especially at this point in the season. like you're week to week finding out who's who like that. And
Right.
you really don't ultimately know what the rankings should justifiably be and who's who until you get near the end, if not the end of the season.
If you're going to
And
use preseason rankings, it has to, people have to understand that massive jumps are going to happen.
right.
You know, it's
Well,
like
right. If
averages, right? If
yeah,
you don't have average, if you don't have a large scope, you're not going to have a large average of gameplay, then, you know, any small outlier, anything period is going to change that average by a mile. So you can rank someone at 10 because they got a really good win. But the moment that that other team gets blown out, like imagine if they had Oklahoma State at like, oh, well, let's rank them 15, and then they lost to Oregon 69-3. But because LSU, let's say in this case, beat Oklahoma State number 10 or whatever you had them ranked, and they blew Oklahoma State out or something. It's like, but you move. It's like, you know what I'm saying? It's like you just can't. It changes so much week to week this early on because you're constantly finding more out about these teams and you have no
yeah,
clue about them. So first of all, that's why preseason rankings are dumb in the first place. But if you're going to have preseason rankings, you definitely need to make sure that, look, it's okay to drop a team 20 ranks. Notre Dame, the minute they lost 2 in a row, out out of the 25. They should have been gone. They were 0-2. They were winless, and then they dropped them to 24 because they're like, oh, well, we had them. We believe that preseason they were going to be great, like 7 or 8, whatever they were, I forget. But like we believe they were going to be top 10 team, you know, preseason. So it doesn't make sense to drop them out the 25 after 2 losses. And it's like, well, everybody else is undefeated. There's like 30 undefeated teams. Why would you put Notre Dame, like, because here's the thing, I get the idea that Notre Dame, oh, well, Notre Dame's got to be better than Tulsa or whatever. How do you know? I'm sure you probably thought the same thing about Oklahoma State. Oh, Oklahoma State's going to be better than Tulsa. Oklahoma State looks like crap. You know, you can't just assume
yeah.
because they're Power Four and big brand that they're going to be good. We thought the same thing about Florida State last season, and they fell apart and went like 3-8 or whatever it was, or 3-9. It's like you don't
Well,
know. You just don't know. So preseason rankings
it
based off
will.
of what you think is it's going to be
Yeah,
like just doesn't make sense. Or if you're going to do it, change it exponentially as it makes sense to. Like, I'm sorry, Notre
I
Dame being
think. I
ranked
think the
is
biggest.
unbelievable.
Yeah, what it is, you know, okay, if we're gonna, try and justify preseason rankings in order to build hype for the season and make big, you know, fabricated big games. I really don't know why I did the quotes there, kind of created a redundancy there. But if we're gonna create like fabricated hype games for good television, and if your motive is, and I mean, I guess keeping the season interesting from the get go, I don't feel like college football needs that help, but if we're going for that, I guess it's not that bad of a thing. But as you said, you have to, the only way you can justify that is that if you're willing to adjust the rankings accordingly, if you're willing to adjust the rankings realistically as things unfold. But the issue is there's two sides to that coin of why the AP doesn't adjust it accordingly. Number
Right.
one, they got to save face. If they start jumping people around 20 spots at a time, or one, teams ranked 10 one week and the next week they're out because they're 0-2, it's like, then that makes the AP look less
Yep.
credible. It makes them look stupid. But this is what happens when you
I
create
didn't
an
even think about
inherent,
that.
right. When you create an inherently flawed system, that's what happens. But now they have to do these mental gymnastics to make themselves look better, but unfortunately, it doesn't work because of the way that they play that, the formula being inherently flawed, and them trying to save face, they end up with an 0-2 team in the top 25. And you trying to save face, that result just makes you look dumber because the AP's been getting ragged about that. But the other side of that coin is Notre Dame's a big brand. It's not just about saving face, it's about keeping the big brands relevant. So I guarantee you, if that was not Notre Dame, if that had been, uh, let's say, if that had been like Wake Forest or something, they would have been out. They would have put them
I,
out.
yeah, and you know what's
But
funny
it's
is, and
Notre
maybe it's
Dame.
because it's a Big Ten thing, and they want to make sure that. And I honestly, you know what? maybe I'm getting a little conspiratorial here, but I think one of the reasons they keep a team like Illinois higher and they didn't like drop them is they want to keep Illinois ranked because these other big brand Big Ten teams will play Illinois at some point, and you can use that to the advantage of making them look better. Be like, Illinois, man, like they're ranked 24, one loss, but we'll keep them ranked 22. So then, we'll push them up because, they got a couple bad games. Then they'll be 18 when they play Penn State or whatever. So then if Penn State whoops up on them like we figure they will, then we can be like, yeah, Penn State is a good team. They beat a ranked Illinois by 7,000 points.
Right.
Just like they want to throw
Right.
Indiana back up there. Indiana beats, Illinois never proved themselves, no reason to be in the top 10. And because they were in the top 10 and the AP thought they deserved to be in the top 10, Indiana exposes them, beats the snot out of them. But instead of just dropping Illinois out and being like, okay, well, let's give Indiana more time, being like, oh, well, Illinois is probably not nowhere near as good as we thought. No, they're like, no, Indiana's just got to be like a goated team. So they put them at like 11. And I tell you right now, it's because the AP's favorite two words are returning production. If you got returning production, you might as well go ahead and write them a ticket in the top 10 if you're the AP. That's how it goes. That's how it goes. That's
I
why
think,
Penn State. That's why Penn State is consistently in the top 3. So even though
well,
they
I
haven't
think,
they haven't shown
well,
anything.
what's so weird about a team like Penn State is returning production for Penn State. When has that ever had playoff implications? So that's kind of, I mean, yeah, they made it to the playoff last year, but I mean, I think returning production is I think it's a valid thing to consider. Um, and if you're going to use that as part of your objective basis for your inherently flawed preseason ranking system, that's fine. But as I said before, what you have to be willing to do is eat crow when it's time to make those exponential, dramatic adjustments to the rankings because it's week to week and it's so early and we're still figuring things out. Because if you don't, that's the thing. They're so afraid of dropping big brands and looking dumb and losing credibility that in trying to not lose credibility and serve the big brands, they end up losing credibility because they're not willing to eat crow of their preseason rankings and make those adjustments. And what you were
Mhm.
getting into early is interesting. I'm glad you mentioned that because you're kind of getting into like the area of the SEC and Big Ten, like the big brands of college football kind of having that influence of the way that they try to set the rankings up. So that's an interesting point to make. Because I mean, hell, look at where LSU is. How about we just go ahead and go down the list and talk about this?
Yep. So I guess we'll start with LSU. I mean, granted, okay. So I think Ohio State being at number 1, I don't know. It's just the flaw of the preseason rankings in general, but whatever. They're the defending national champs. I don't really think they should be number 1 because honestly, I know there's plenty of teams that should be above Ohio State because Ohio State doesn't have a good win. They have a good win based off what the AP thinks is a good win, but I don't think it's a good win. Texas has not shown anything special so far. So, do
And
I
I
think Ohio
think
State's a
that,
great team? Of course I do, but I don't think it's fair to give rankings yet. So them being at number
well,
1 is
see,
dumb. So
there's a lot of factors that you have to play into that when you determine ranks. Obviously, there's a lot of qualitative factors that go into play, you know, and quantitative. But because it's more of a, the way that the reality works of the game and the people and everything, the qualitative factors are a little more important most of the time. But the fact of the matter is that okay, you've got things like returning production, the current record, the quality of opponents, and their strength of record and things like that, their resume in general. And early in the season with these preseason rankings, if we're going to do it, I think those make sense. But number one, they don't really honor the resume idea very much, um, because you have a Georgia team, which we'll get into that a little more when we get to them. But we have a Georgia team that went into Rocky Top and rallied to beat a really good Tennessee team in Rocky Top, who
well, let's be fair to our
the
point. What
AP
we
has them ranked
think
in the top
is a good
15.
what we
But
think is
my
a good
point is
Tennessee
that
team.
the AP's got to play by their own rules. They can't
Right.
just make their own rules. They already don't make sense. Why make them even less so make sense by still having LSU above Georgia? Why? Just because they have
And
one more win?
Miami or Penn State.
What what quality opponent does LSU or Miami have over Georgia?
Like judging by the AP, if you go by the AP and their
Right.
own rankings, Ohio State and Georgia should be number 1 and number 2 because they're the only ones with a currently top 15 win. LSU's none of their wins are in the top 15 anymore. Penn State hasn't played anybody with any kind of spine. Miami, their only good win is Notre Dame, and Notre Dame or good win is Notre Dame, but Notre Dame's dropped all the way to number 22. And like
That
then
they
we
don't
look
even
at
deserve to be ranked right
and then
now.
Miami also, and it baffles me. It absolutely baffles me that um Miami went up 2 spots for beating Florida. 2 spots for beating Florida. They went up
That
two
I will say,
spots.
that's something I haven't understood this season. Florida, the Florida Gate, Billy Napier's Florida Gators has been like the ultimate weighing metric for a lot of these teams. Napier's Florida's trash. And they're giving
Never
LSU
been
and
good.
Miami benefited just amazingly from beating a trash Florida team. They're treating Florida like they're the ultimate test. Since when did we start making Napier's Florida the ultimate gauge, first of
Better
all?
shoot
Well,
Georgia up
second
to
of
number
all,
1 when they beat Florida.
let's talk about, as far as the preseason rankings go, when you get to this point, they don't mean anything because now we're at the point in the season where if we're going to have rankings, now the only thing we can go by is the eye test and the resume. Where they were at the beginning of day one of the season based on their preseason rankings, that all needs to be just completely erased and rewritten. That influence and effect needs to be rewritten because, and with returning production being a big point in that, that's what I was going into is that now that we're where we are, returning production is no longer a valid
Right.
talking point. It's not about because that's an expectation. Returning production is not a valid point anymore because now we're seeing it unfold real time what they're really made of. So the whole returning production argument for teams like Ohio State don't work. Not to mention, I think there's a big detail we're missing with Ohio State. Returning production, defending champions or not, they have a brand new freshman starting quarterback. They don't have the quarterback they had when they won the Natty. He's a brand new freshman at quarterback. So returning production kind of loses some of its validity in that case. Let's let them play. And we're not even talking about Texas and Arch Manning. We talked about Arch Manning enough in the last episode, but let them play, let it unfold. Now we have to go by the eye test and resume. Get this preseason returning production crap out the way.
If
And
you're
what's
going
so crazy
by,
about it,
sorry.
the last thing I was going to say is just reiterate the fact that what's so crazy about it is that the AP won't even honor their own rankings when adjusting for resume. Once again, LSU, Penn State, and Miami being ranked over Georgia when Georgia's the only one with a top 15 win. I think they're the only one with a ranked win period based on the AP's rankings. So what are we doing, AP? What's good? And I'm not just saying that because I'm a Georgia fan. I think everybody would agree that's just objective reasoning. Like Georgia's the only
It
team
would be one thing if like
with that
Florida, if
kind of
they
win.
had Florida ranked at like 15 or something when Miami beat
But
them,
even
and
they
that's
don't
why
even
they
have
dropped them
Florida
out.
ranked. They know it's
But
bad. They're bad.
Florida wasn't ranked when Miami beat them, so shooting them up 2 spots for
That
beating an
too.
unranked
They're
Florida doesn't make
right.
sense. That's what doesn't make sense. If you want to pull your AP bullcrap and put a team in a stupid spot, like let's say you put like you kept Florida ranked or whatever, and now Miami's got a good top 15 win against a terrible Florida that you decided to keep ranked. It's like whatever. Then I would make a little more sense. Okay, whatever. They were 15 and they're only out now because Miami beat them. But you didn't have Florida ranked when Miami played them. So why? Like, why did they move up 2 spots? Why did they pass Penn State? Penn State didn't
I
play
don't
like any.
know.
The Penn State hasn't played
Yeah.
any ranked teams, yeah. But Miami has that win against Notre Dame. But Notre Dame shouldn't even be ranked. And even with their rankings, it's like Notre Dame's number 22. It's like but that's the preseason ranking fallacy. Is that like I just don't understand. You can't make sense of the AP poll because it's like you kind of have to go off the previous rankings that season where like, oh, well, they beat Notre Dame and Notre Dame was number 7. So it's like, but now they've dropped rank because Notre Dame got beat, right? Yeah, I get that argument that, oh, well, a team drops because they were beat by that better team that should be higher ranked now. But that's kind of my argument with Florida, is that Florida just wasn't ranked. And now we know enough about Notre Dame to see that Notre Dame really isn't all that great. So,
And maybe they'll
because
be
they haven't
maybe
looked good either in
right,
their
and maybe
losses.
as it unfolds, they'll become ranking worthy. We don't know for
Oh, we
sure
don't know
yet.
because the rest of their season is service academies. So
Well, yeah, the typical
glad to
Notre
see you back in
Dame,
the playoffs, Notre Dame.
the good old stat padding, record padding Notre Dame. Um, but I think the obvious trend here is, I mean, look at the rankings. The obvious trend here is they're really grasping for straws to keep these big brands, these big NIL, big brand college teams up top. Um, and I don't know if we have time to like talk about each ranking, but these rankings don't make sense. And the thing about it is, we already mentioned if the AP is going to do what they're doing, number one, you have to be willing to make the logically uh, according adjustments week to week that reasonably match the scale and scope of adjustments that are needed week to week early on. Number two, uh, and above all, even if you don't do the former, why even have these rankings if you're not going to follow your own rankings? If you're not going to honor your own rankings in the process of making these rankings and adjusting them towards who's got better resumes and wins, if you're not even going to honor your own rankings, then what are we even doing? What?
Right.
Because we can talk about how flawed they are all day, but at the end of the day, if the AP is not even honoring their own rankings, that's the biggest issue of all. It's like, what are we even doing? But
Yeah.
AP's dumb.
Well, I think we got the main points for the AP that we need to get out. That's kind of our view on it now. So I kind of am just
Yeah.
ignoring the rankings best I can at this point to try and just get
Yeah,
my
because
own
we
mentality of the
really
team.
don't have to go any further with it because I mean, no, the we've already pretty much explained, and everybody can kind of see that the rankings are just they're just bad, and Indiana, for example, I think Indiana's a good team. They look good. Hell, they may even be playoff worthy again this year. But it's like we're putting Indiana, they shot up 8 spots because they exposed what is looking to be a fraudulent and probably going to be a mid or even bad Illinois team this year. But which is so weird. It's like, oh, we're going to honor our ranking system because Indiana beat Illinois the way they did. But I don't know. LSU's best win is an unranked trash Florida team, but somehow they're still above Georgia, who just beat 15 ranked Tennessee at Rocky Top. It's crazy, man. It doesn't
Doesn't make
make any
any sense.
sense.
Doesn't make any
Doesn't
sense.
make any sense.
So I guess it's where we're at. It just doesn't make any sense. So, well, what's our next topic? I guess we should go ahead and
It'll
move
sort
on.
itself out. By the end of the season, it'll sort itself out. We got a 12 team field
I just
now,
hope
and
that the
we saw
playoff
the benefit
committee,
last year.
I just hope that the playoff committee does not let like the AP influence them in any way. I
Right.
really hope they
Hopefully they don't
100% stick to
because
themselves and don't let the AP convince them, but they will. So,
well, the expectation, well, obviously because of the common business reasons, big brands, good ratings, all that crap, that's going to have a part. But the playoff committee, what the expectation is supposed to be is that come the end of the season, when it's all said and done, you take a blank slate and you go through the rankings from start to finish based on the totality of the season at the end. You're not really supposed to gauge it by previous rankings. You got to take it the way it is, at the end of the season with that blank slate.
right.
Um, so we'll see. I mean, hell, the 12 team field helped the true best team in the country actually win the Natty last year because if it wasn't for the 12 team field, Ohio State wouldn't have even had a shot at it. And
Yeah.
they were the best team in the country come the playoffs. They were the champions. So it worked last season. So we'll see.
Yeah.
You
They
know,
had the hardest route and yet still were the most dominant. So,
yeah. So
um, Well, I guess what's our next? Did we want to get into like the other state of the sport topic and then into there? Do we want to
What
do a
was that?
prediction?
What was the other
It
topic?
was I guess I'll just real quick explain my name because I think this can something small real quick. I named myself Beck's
Go
Check
ahead.
because I wanted to talk about the fact that Carson Beck's getting a lot of money for going to Miami. Nothing wrong with that. I'm not trying to say that going, the NIL thing and then wanting to go to a school to go get the money. It's like, you're a college student. If you can get a lot of money because you have the skill to get paid that much, that's all you. But I just don't like the media trying to sugarcoat things or create like falsified things. Because I remember last weekend on game day, when for the Miami and Florida game, they were like, well, they were talking about Beck, Desmond Howard specifically, and he was like, oh well, the story of Carson Beck, it's kind of an odd thing, kind of a crazy, interesting thing about how Carson Beck, he just it was this feeling. He had this feeling to go to Miami. He hadn't even like it was just like this vibe that he got from this team and this feeling. It just was like a connection from this, like an unspoken connection, right? And that's exactly what he said, an unspoken connection. In fact, he didn't even meet Mario Cristobal until he stepped on the field for practice. And then I'm like, it was not an unspoken connection, my friend. It was what talks more than anything, and that is money. So again, no problem with that, but I don't want to sugarcoating it. It's like, yeah, he went there because it's in his home state and because there's money. There was a ton of money involved, you know.
Right.
So I mean, and I do think that there was some, and I don't really think it's a connection thing as much as like it was the money in the state of Florida, and yes, he was going
Convenience.
to have probably a better receiver core at least initially. But Georgia has made some really, really big changes to the receiver room, and I think that their receiver room is very solid right now. Which was very
And
evident in the
kind of
game
like
against
a,
Tennessee.
and we
So
may see another example of what I call the Bear Alexander effect. Um, not to call anybody out, but we all know how it kind of played out for Bear Alexander. It's like you didn't what's the way I'm trying to put this? You didn't hold out, as you should have. Like you weren't patient enough to, you know, let things fall into place with you. Like you're talking about Kirby Smart's Georgia. You know, obviously Bear Alexander went to USC because everybody wants to be starter right off from the start. Everybody wants to be starter from the start, which is a whole nother issue to talk about another day because that's why we're seeing a lot of guys who are supposed to be super awesome not do so well when they first get in the NFL because they end up trying to take a quick instant gratification route, which lends itself to not learning, not developing, and not playing against high caliber competition and developing within such. So they're going to learn the hard way, unfortunately. But you know, Beck and he was a senior last year, though, wasn't he, at Georgia?
it was red shirt, so he had
So
he
yeah,
was
one
able
more
to
year
play
at Georgia.
another year. Yeah.
You have one more year. You have one more year with Kirby Smart's Georgia, and you would rather take the money and abandon ship than. But you know what? That team, there may have been something between the
There
team
may have been.
and
I think what it was is
who
that there's something we didn't see at all because, but I
maybe.
think at the end of the day, I think I'm not upset. Like you're
No, I'm
kind of
not going to
you're saying yeah, but
chastise the
I
guy.
don't even think Carson Beck's decision was the wrong thing to do. You're talking like maybe he shouldn't have done that. No, it's worked out perfectly for both teams, at least so far. Carson Beck's having a great season so far. Gunnar Stockton just had one of the best quarterback displays of the entire season so far.
Yeah, but who do you
In that
think
game
is more
against Tennessee.
likely? And I make a maybe premature, uh, you know, assessment. But sorry, I couldn't remember the word for a second. I'll make a little bit of a premature assessment. But who do you think has a higher likelihood of winning in the playoffs and possibly winning the national championship?
Oh, you said winning. I
Chris,
thought you were going to say going to the playoffs. I would said Miami
well,
because
no,
they
because
make the
Miami's
easier schedule.
their schedule, and their big brand advantage is going to guarantee them a spot at this point.
And their only
But who
difficult
knows?
game is Florida State, but Florida State is currently tied going near the end of the third quarter with Virginia.
Whatever happens, but a 2-loss Miami at this point, based on the hype they built around it, a 2-loss Miami is going to get in the playoffs. But like I said, who do you think is going to fare better in the playoffs and have a better shot at winning the Natty? Kirby Smart's Georgia as it is, or Cristobal's Miami? So I think that's maybe premature, but that's the thing for that I'm driving the point home is that for Beck, I don't know everything he's got going on personally. And I mean, I guess, going back to your home state and taking the money, there's nothing wrong with that. But it's like, do you want it to be all about you, or do you want to, like, do you want your best shot at greatness with your team? You know what I mean? Like, because quite frankly, I'm just going to go ahead and say it. Miami's not winning the Natty this year. They probably won't even win in the first round of the playoffs, assuming that they don't get like a bye from their conference championship. But
assuming that they don't even, well, that's not how it works this season. So they'd have to just be ranked in the top 4 to get a bye. You get an
right.
automatic bid in the playoffs now, but you don't get top 4, like automatic top 4.
They just don't
I
look
don't
like
know.
a
We say
valid
that, but there
contender
were
to me
teams
right
last
now.
season that they lost to that they technically were projected that they shouldn't have lost to, and they still did. So we'll see. I mean, they don't play Georgia Tech this season, which I think Georgia Tech has a pretty good chance against them. So they're dodging that. Virginia just took the lead on Florida State late in the third. So, I mean, there's no telling how good Florida State actually is anymore.
But
So,
I will say, speaking of Georgia Tech, I'm going to go ahead and say it, and hopefully I don't look stupid later, but I did predict Georgia Tech to win the ACC this year. People may say I'm crazy at this point, but I think the returning production may paint that picture.
they're
Maybe.
they're the second highest ranked team in the ACC right now, so it's not a crazy
I
thing to
think
think
Georgia.
so at the
I've
moment. Which, granted, that
don't
I say that like AP, but like I think
right.
Georgia Tech deserves to be the second highest ranked team in the ACC because there's only 2 currently good-looking teams, and that's Florida State
I think
and
Georgia Tech.
Georgia Tech.
I think Georgia Tech and Miami may be likely to play anyway come the end of the season, and I got a feeling Georgia Tech might win the ACC this year. But that's assuming that they get that offense going the way that it should be going. They got guys like Haynes King at the helm. Their offense has not been looking up to its potential. So we'll see if they get that figured out. But I think if they can get that figured out, Brent Key and the talent he's got, I think Georgia Tech's got a shot to win the ACC. I'm predicting Georgia Tech to win the ACC this year, and it ain't just because I'm a Georgia boy. Maybe a little bit.
Well, I guess that's it for those 2 segments. We're kind of pushing time. I don't know if you want to just.
Yeah. I think that just about covers everything that we were going to talk about on the state of the sport. We really didn't want to spend this much time on it, but we're the objectively correct professional yappers, and you know, we when you're consistently inconsistent professionals, you kind of have a lot to catch up on sometimes. So it's a double dog situation. So,
Well, when you sit here and constantly spend time explaining the situation, we're just going to keep adding more time. So I think we
man,
should.
our viewers look, dude. Our viewers are people too. Stop being a jerk. Well, anyway, thank you guys for watching, and for the real ones who are objectively correctly real that stuck to the end to hear all of our objective correctness, we salute you. Um, we'll talk about the Georgia Bama game in another episode to be posted, so be on the lookout for that. And anything you want to say, Bex check?
Nope. Just that he's probably already cashed it, and so he better win that Heisman.
Well,
Thank you guys for
I guess
watching.
that's facts no printer. And as for me, Gunderward bound, my time has come. I thought the green screen would work better on that. We got to get out of here. Thanks for watching, everyone. I'm 41 now.